for a brief review and see if anyone else did their homework. Even his is blank this week.
Well, I didn't, yeah,
That's
I was thinking, I
okay.
can't do my homework on my iPhone.
Why not? Most students act as if they do. I'm just kidding. All right.
That's when I do my best homework.
Yeah. That's the work you do best at home, is sleep. Okay, well, then I guess we're not going to go through one of them right now. I'll bring this up a little bit. There we go. So I got one level. Okay.
When are we going to see an example of one you've done? That's what I thought.
When pigs fly? No, I'll do one. Okay. I'll see. Maybe I'll have one for you next week. Let me see if I have time to do it this week. One of the RRA reflection.
One of these.
Yeah. At the end of the book, there's a list of various things. All right. List of various things. Or I might bring one from a student.
Do you have an example? Is there an example in the book? I don't know. Please.
I don't think I've got one in this book.
Yeah, there's an example in here.
Is there?
No. Go to page 48, Justin. That's the 12 topics.
Yeah, the topics start on page 48. Yep. Salvation, and then all of the things underneath salvation, hell, things under. You can pick one main topic like salvation, or you can pick any of the subtopics. It's on page 48, like you said. Okay. You can pick a main topic, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can pick a subtopic under there. And what you do is reflect on it, like we have up on the screen right now. Reflection, and then reasons, and then alternatives. So let's scroll down to the rest of them. Reflection, reasons, and consider the alternatives. I did one in class, I think last year, on hell, but I didn't write it out. I think we just discussed it. Maybe we'll do that again. So since we don't have any homework we can go through right now, what we're going to go to is turn in your textbook over to page, well, it says 41 in mine. Yeah, page 41. So let's see if I can get down to there and page. That should be it. Page 41?
That's 44.
Oh, I need to go up some here.
Your picture cover up the page on.
You're right where you need to be.
Okay, well then I can do like that. Just get rid of the picture.
You got it.
Okay, chapter 4, step 2. We went through RRA, and another one that's a little more complicated, although I want you to do your homework off the first one so that you'll be familiar with that one. But the next step in critical thinking would be one they call Frisco, F-R-I-S-C-O. In this mid-advanced level of critical thinking, we will use a chart. The purpose of the chart is to help you see on paper what you need to learn to do in your head. Remember, one short definition of critical thinking is, quote, thinking about your thinking while you are thinking, unquote. The chart is only a temporary but necessary crutch. Okay? Do that. There we go. When you break a leg, it is necessary to use a crutch while healing the bone. But once the bone is healed, it would be ridiculous and redundant to continue using the crutch because now you are able to function quite well without it. In fact, continued use of the crutch would be cumbersome and actually hinder the process of walking. The same goes for the chart. It is necessary because your ability to think critically has been broken by our educational system and needs to be fixed and mended. The chart will help you as you heal, but once you have repaired your broken thinking, the chart would be a hindrance and not a further help. Use it during your time of learning, but only until it is no longer necessary. Here we go. Okay, so let's scroll on down. Start with focus. You'll notice the picture is out of focus. That's why I made it that way on purpose. What is the main point? That is, what is the conclusion? Okay, many times someone will ask you a question, and then as the conversation goes along, you'll find out they're not answering that question at all. They used it like a hook. That's all, a bait. That's all it was to get you into a conversation, and I'm going to show you an imaginary conversation here, just further down the page, to show you what I mean. So focus. Decide what is the main point. That is, what is the conclusion? Once you have established that, then you will know how to judge and weigh the reasons given that are being used to supposedly prove that point. Sometimes, because of lack of clarity, the main point in the material is not always readily seen. Remember the old saying, some of you might remember it, if you can't wow them with your intellect, baffle them with your baloney. Yeah.
There was another word.
Yeah. But it's the same basic premise, is that yak. Have you ever listened to somebody try to give a speech that way? Yes, yak. Talk, going around in circles. Well, since this is true, and then this is the same as that, then this must be true, but they never explain why this is true. And then when they come back later, they say, now the reason this is true is because this is true.
Inconsistent circular reasoning.
Yeah, it's just circular reasoning. That's what the column, the evolutionary column, that's the premise it's based upon. This is 32 million years old. I'm going to go on the main cam here so I can use both my hands. They'll say this is 32 million years old rock formation. All right? And by the way, the geologic column exists nowhere on Earth. Nowhere. They take a piece from here, they take a piece from there, a piece from across the ocean in Europe, another piece from down in Australia, another piece in Africa, and stack them all on top of each other. Okay? So they'll have a geologic column like this. This is 32 million years ago. I'm just going to put mil. That doesn't mean millimeters. It means million for me. All right? They'll say that's 32 million years ago. How do we know that's 32 million years ago? Well, it's because in that column we find this guy. Now, my drawings are not real drawings. We find dinosaurs in that part of the column that were on the Earth 32 million years ago. So we know this column is 32 million years old because we find that kind of dinosaur in it. Then later on they'll say, how do we know that this dinosaur was 32 million years ago? Because it's in this column, this part of the column. Yeah. So you're just chasing your tail. They'll go back and they'll say the latest theory that I can find right now is the universe exists because there is a bulk of 11, I think it was 11 universes, a bulk of 11 universes, and because of them, our universe had to come into existence. So there was no God because it was the bulk that caused our universe. Well, now we go back to the same question. Where did the bulk come from? Well, that came from something else. Okay, where did that come from? Well, that came from something else.
It was there 32 million years.
It was there 32 million years ago, that's why. Dark matter, dark energy. The universe is composed of 96% of dark matter that is impossible to ever detect.
And how did they get that percentage?
They got that percentage because the universe exists.
They can find the other 8%.
Yeah. So since 96, we're 4%, okay? So since our 4% exists, there has to be another 96% that doesn't, it exists, but it's indetectable.
That's nonsensical.
Yeah, of course it is. It's like saying, I'm not going to believe there's a God. Yeah.
Exactly, grabbing it.
Yeah, I refuse to believe there's a God, so therefore there has to be 96% of indetectable matter
So they practice
has
another,
to be there for us to exist.
Grabbing it air.
yeah, they practice another form of faith.
And it is. It's all by faith. The only difference is our faith makes more sense logically. Science teaches that for every effect, there has to be a cause. All right? They believe the effect, the universe, was from a cause with nothing that caused that cause. We believe that the universe exists because of a cause that we call God. Okay? So what takes more faith? To believe everything came from nothing without a cause, or everything came from nothing with a cause?
With the God.
Well, sure. Why do we stay on the earth and not fly off into space?
Gravity.
Thing called gravity. All right? So the effect is I stay on the earth. The cause is gravity is pulling us all together. Everything's trying to pull together. All right? Quantum theory. I was listening to some science program, and it was about Einstein, and Einstein refused to believe in quantum theory. Because quantum theory, he said, God does not play dice with the universe. Because quantum theory works absolutely perfect to a point.
Independent of God.
And then it would, yeah. But at a certain point, it breaks down. We have never seen an electron. Do you know why we've never seen an electron?
Too small to see.
No, no. That's not the reason. It's because according to science now, if I look at it, I cause it to disappear and be, not disappear, I cause it to be somewhere else.
Well, that's kind of out there. And
Yeah, that's kind of out there. What is my looking at it causing it to be somewhere else? They say that an electron is a particle. Okay, that's what when I was in school, all right, protons, neutrons, electrons, and the electron was in a circle like a planet. It's because the guy that came up with that theory based it upon what he saw in the sky.
Neutrons.
The planets going around the sun. Now they find out that since if I look at it, I cause it to be somewhere else, the electron doesn't exist. It is a shell of energy, not a particle. And so by looking at it and causing it to be somewhere else, there's something wrong there somewhere. There's a breakdown. And so Einstein refused, and he was not a Christian. He was a deist. He believed there was a God, and that was it. All right? And so, in fact, I believe Israel asked him at one time to be the first president of the nation of Israel. And he said, no, I don't believe in the God you believe in. He was a Jew. But he refused that because he said, I don't believe in the God you believe in, but I do believe there's a God. And so quantum theory, because it goes down and breaks down to where it will not work anymore, he said God does not play dice with the universe. Okay?
So what God did he believe in then?
He was a deist, meaning he believes there's a higher power.
Oh, okay.
A higher power.
There's a God, but he's not definable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever he is, he doesn't play dice with the universe. Okay? So, if you get into a discussion with someone about evolutionary theory, never, especially with humanity, never say man came from a monkey. Because the evolutionists will throw you out the door. You say, you're an idiot, you don't know anything about what we believe. Evolutionary theory does not teach we came from monkeys. It means we came from a common ancestor, the hominids, which would be the great apes, so on and so forth. All right? That's why we use the term anthropos from the Greek. Anthropos means a man-faced being. And we get anthropology, the anthropoid apes. Okay? So if you're going to have a discussion on evolution, make sure you find out What is the main point this guy's trying to prove? Is he trying to prove there's dinosaurs? Or is he trying to prove that the geological column is correct? Or maybe he's going to use this whole thing to prove this. Humanity. Maybe his main point has nothing to do with the geologic column, but he's going to have a big discussion about it. Maybe his main point has nothing to do with dinosaurs 32 million years ago. But he's going to use that because what he's really trying to prove is that humanity came through the process of evolution. There are many Christians. Also, if you have a discussion with an evolutionist, never assume they're an atheist. Because you can believe in evolution and still be a Christian and believe that God used evolution to bring about humanity.
Well, most Christians believe it. They believe that way.
I was just reading in the headlines, and I call it, and the first part of an article, the guy was complaining that most Christians today do not have a biblical worldview.
Right.
Most Christians don't. They're a product of our public school system.
Western scientific.
Yeah, Western scientific. That's exactly right. And so focus on what is he really trying to prove? Is he trying to prove the geological column's right? And he'll say, hey, let's have a discussion about the geological column. Oh, okay. That's the title. But that doesn't mean that is the topic that he's actually going to try to prove. Yes?
That made me think of those screwballs that came and showed us that Creation Expo thing. I don't like calling them screwballs, but when I was done seeing that whole presentation,
There was no focus.
there was nothing. I kept
Yeah.
trying to figure out what the point that they were trying to make was, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
They had exhibits to show you.
Exhibits.
Yeah. This won't even erase. That's okay. I'll leave that up.
Are you sure you used a dry erase marker?
It's the only ones here. Marks a lot. Dry erase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah, I know.
Chicken.
I'm just chicken. Okay, so let's go back to the textbook. Focus. What are they really trying to prove? Okay. Sometimes, yeah, it's up there. Let's read from the top. Focus. What is the main point? That is, what is the conclusion? Once you have established that, then you will know how to judge and weigh the reasons given that are being used to supposedly prove that point. Sometimes, because of lack of clarity, the main point in the material is not always readily seen, like I showed you here. He started here, and you don't really know he's going there until you're 2/3 of the way through. Now, all of a sudden, you change direction. Half of the reasons that he gave or she gave, you're confused now. You don't know what's really good proofs and what are phony manipulation. You don't know. That's why in public speaking, we always teach that once you get through the body, you get to the conclusion, you never introduce new material. Confuses them.
That's in preaching too.
Well, that's what I said in the public speaking. We started the public speaking class because I didn't want to give anybody a heart attack. How could we have the women in the preaching class? I have women in the preaching class. So we had a public speaking class. The definition of a speech is an oral discourse given with the view of affecting a change in the listener. A sermon is an oral discourse from the Bible given with the view of affecting a change in the listener. So the only difference between a speech and a sermon is one's from the Bible exclusively, and the other one may or may not be. Okay? So, to get back to what we were here, we don't always know where they're going in a speech if they give Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, and now they're going to give the conclusion or the summary and the invitation, and all of a sudden you introduce new material. And they're going, well, now, wait a minute, what about all this stuff you gave me before? What's all that? What are you trying to pull? And in the public speaking class, I really hit that pretty hard. The person that's listening may be a visitor or may be a lost person, okay? They've listened to you give 4 points and they know where you're heading, and all of a sudden, they don't know that you're into the conclusion. All of a sudden, pow, you give them something that's way off here in left field.
Very fun.
Now they're going, wait a minute, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to pull? And the devil will be right there. Watch this guy now. Watch this guy or this gal. Well, yeah, watch it now. What are they trying to pull? You've lost them. Not only that, they're probably not going to come back next week. They probably won't. Why? Well, because that guy's a charlatan. That gal's a phony. They take you all off in this whole direction over here, and all of a sudden, beam me up Scotty, and they want you over here. With nothing in between. Except all that stuff you gave me before, now I'm totally confused. My mind is already made up. Yeah. And so here, sometimes, because of lack of clarity, the main point in the material is not always readily seen. Peruse the material, especially the introduction and any summary or obvious conclusion at the end of it. Discover the main point the author is trying to make. Then you can see if the reasons lead inexorably to that conclusion. Okay? I'm going to go up a little bit for the...
Is that a real word?
Yeah.
Inexorably?
Inexorably. That means, does that lead... Okay, I'm going to go into the...
That's $100.
Well, I don't want the main menu.
Inexorably.
Inexorably.
Yeah, you get too many letters in it.
No, actually, I ran a spell checker.
That don't mean anything.
Okay. What? Well, it means it's spelled right. Inexorably means that the funnel leads to this little hole at the bottom. And there's nothing you can do about it. You put something in that funnel, it's going to go out that hole.
It's a fact.
If it's not too big. It's a fact, but it's not only a fact, it's a fact that only goes one direction and can't go any other. So that's what that means, is that the speech or whatever you're reading, whatever it might be, all of the proofs come down to the point that they're going to go right through that hole of the funnel. They're not going to go anywhere else. That's why, remember, in RRA, consider the alternatives and have proofs to disprove what they say is the proof of why they believe what they believe. That should all be in the body. And writing a sermon to preach, or here we're talking about someone writing an article. You've got it all together, and as much as they try to get out of the funnel, they're going to come down to that conclusion you want them to pull. Okay? That you want them to pull out of all the material you give them. An imaginary case in point would be a treatise titled Tongues in the Bible. Boy, that sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like a good Bible topic. All right? This is just imaginary. Tongues in the Bible. From the title and the introduction, it would seem that tongues and proper use of the gift, as well as showing the misuse of it in the Bible, is the main point, and the conclusion would be that some uses are biblical and some uses are not. Because I didn't just say tongues. Tongues in the Bible. That means I'm going to go into the Bible, and we're going to study what the Bible says about tongues. Then it says some use of tongues are right, and some uses are wrong. That's what the title looks like it's going to deliver. Remember, your title and your introduction in a speech or a sermon is a promise of what you're going to deliver. I was in a meeting down in Texas when I was in Bible college. This preacher got up. It was a Red River Baptist Bible Fellowship meeting. We were required, when I was in Bible college, it was once a month, we were required to go to it. And this guy got up before his sermon, and he told 20 minutes of jokes. 20 minutes. And I mean, they were good jokes. Heads are just about laying on the floor. Just great jokes. I couldn't tell you one thing he preached after that. I couldn't tell you what his topic was. I couldn't tell you one scripture he ever used. After I got out of there and headed back to college, I'm going, that was Apollos in the Bible. Paul, the orator. Boy, when he got done speaking to us, that's the most wonderful sermon I ever heard in my life. What did he say?
By the way, what was it?
I don't know, but man, it was wonderful. That was this guy. He thought he was Jay Leno. He should quit preaching. He didn't make $1 million as a comedian. But as a preacher, an oral discourse given from the Bible with a view to effecting a change in the listener. What change? I didn't know what he said. I don't think anybody else there would ever be able to tell you what he said either. After the jokes, it was too late. We were so busy thinking about the jokes, whatever he preached after that was lost.
It was like a sermon was a joke.
It was. I heard another preacher one time, instead of taking the time to go through and figure out how to pronounce the Old Testament genealogies, he stood up there and he said, and Abraham begat and begat. I was just ready to get up and walk out. Yeah, he was just making fun of the Bible. I mean, I would rather someone at least try to pronounce it. Yeah, he was mocking the Bible. And so, after things like the jokes and after the, what seemed to me mocking of the Bible, I had no idea where those guys were going with those sermons.
Neither did they.
They thought they did, because man, they sounded good. Well, hey, they sounded good, but what they say, it's like asking, somebody in class, what did we just study last week? I know someone that was told they could not teach anymore because for 20 years what they had taught had done nothing. That they had actually at that time 17 years, that their 17 years of teaching amounted to nothing. Because they asked one kid, I'm not going to mention who it was, you probably know who it was. Every question you asked that kid, you know what answer you got? Oh. That was his common way of getting out of having to be involved in class and do anything. You could ask him what his name is. Oh. That was just his automatic answer. Okay? So instead of, focus. What are they trying to prove? Where are they going? Listen to the introduction. If you're reading it, hopefully, we're talking about it. Reading that the introduction, the title says tongues in the Bible. All right. So I'm expecting from the title and the introduction, it would seem that tongues and proper use of the gift, as well as showing the misuse of it in the Bible, is the main point. And the conclusion would be that some uses are biblical and some uses are not. That's tongues in the Bible. Oh, we need to go back to the text for those that don't have a copy. Oh, okay. However, as deeper consideration, this is that imaginary treatise. However, as deeper consideration is given to it, it is soon discovered that the author is really trying to prove that the charismatics that believe in the modern use of the gift of tongues are heretics and are to be avoided as such. Now, I understand the Bible talks about tongues, about the proper use and the misuse. But if we're going to study tongues in the Bible, if that's the title you give me, I want to study tongues in the Bible. But if in this imaginary treatise, as you go through, you understand this guy's just trying to prove the charismatics are a bunch of heretics. He's not trying to prove whether it's biblical or not.
He don't care.
No, he didn't care. And somewhere along the line, he was exposed to some charismatic that just set him off, and he's going to pick a verse here and a verse there and a verse here and a verse with a text without a context is the pretext. All right? And so as you go through this imaginary treatise, you're starting to get the idea, this guy's not trying to show us what's proper and what's improper in the Bible. He's just trying to prove to us that charismatic down the street's a heretic.
He needs to change the title.
Why didn't he tell me that in the first place? Change the title to The Heresy of the Modern Tongues Movement. Okay, now I understand where we're going. Yeah, hey, all the things that they give in that imaginary treatise would fit that title. Like I said, change the title. That the modern tongues movement is not biblical. Okay, fine. Now I know where we're going. But that's not what the title was. The title was Tongues in the Bible. The material presented, the reasons, are good ones, showing the biblically correct use of tongues, as well as showing what would constitute misuse of that gift. But the application throughout is always towards proving that those groups that use tongues today are absolute heretics. That's what that person will be trying to prove. But they're not going to come out and tell you. They're going to lead you all around in a convoluted trail and throw in a scripture here. Why? Well, because we're independent Baptists. Bible's, that's it. Final authority. Well, I can misuse that authority. Remember the thing I've used time after time? I can prove you double-cross me. God demands you go out. It says it in the Bible. Go down and do likewise. Go commit suicide. That's what this kind of a thing is. They're going around and around and around. Hey, we're supposed to be heading this way, but we get about halfway through, and we're clean on the other side of the earth. And I don't know how we're ever going to get back there. And you know what? You never do. Because that was not their topic in the first place. Yeah, it was just a smoke screen. If the author's intent was to prove that charismatics are heretics for practicing tongues, then the title should have been changed to reflect that as the point pursued, and the introduction should also have made it perfectly clear that the heretical nature of charismatics was the main point of the treatise, and that drawing that conclusion was to be based upon their use of tongues. Instead of using the Bible as a hammer to beat on people, or as a hook to just get them in, use it to prove or disprove your point. But tell them what the point is. And that's what the introduction is, a promise of what you're going to deliver in the body that's going to lead them inexorably to the conclusion that you want them to draw. Now, if you, like when I was just reading this, the other day I was going through some of my old hard drives, and I came across a speech that I gave to the atheists of Utah. I think I had mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, either in a sermon or in class. And I went through that speech because it just happened to be in the old hard drive. And I may turn that into a little study. Might turn that into a study. But they knew where I was coming from. They knew I was a fundamental independent Baptist preacher. And they wanted me to lecture on morals and ethics. I said, okay, I will, if I can include from the Bible as one of the basis for people drawing and forming their morals and ethics. They said, well, you're the one giving the speech.
You had the best kind of captive audience you could have.
They begged me to come do it.
Out of the Bible.
Yeah, and then at the end, they pinned me down. They wouldn't let me talk about anything but the Bible for another 45 minutes or an hour. That was after I gave the
You
speech.
shouldn't have paid for that.
No, you couldn't buy it. Not from the atheists of Utah. But I did what they wanted and gave them what they wanted, which was a different basis. But see, they knew where I was going, and they knew where I was coming from. Because we'd already been, Grace and I used to go there once a month, sometimes once every 2 or 3 months. The devil's my only enemy, but I like to know what his soldiers are doing. I like to view the battlefield once in a while, not in my own safe territory. I like to go into the enemy's territory and see what they're doing. But I told the students that went with us one time, I said, your job is keep your mouth shut and listen. Because you don't walk into a bear's cave with a baseball bat, whack the bear in the head and tell him you're hunting bear. It's not a smart thing to do, all right? So when you're in their territory, observe what they're doing, okay? Because there were like 25 or 30 of them there. And when I took the students that day, there were probably 25 or 30 that day too.
And if you're not rooted and grounded, you don't want to go there at all.
No, you don't. I wanted them one of the main reasons I wanted them to go there was so they would not think that atheists were three-headed hydra that were going to suck the blood out of their neck. There were some nice people. There were jerks there, just like there were anywhere else. But a lot of them, well, the man and woman that headed the atheists of Utah at that time were ex-Methodists. Just really nice people. And I had, in fact, I think I got one in my pocket. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Oh, I think I took them out and put them in when I changed.
Gospel tracts.
Yeah, it's the smiley face. I handed it to every atheist there. When I handed it to the head atheist and his wife, he looked at me, because he's an ex-Methodist, you know. And he was old enough, he probably was in church back when the Methodists were preaching the gospel. I handed it to him. He looked at me and kind of smiled a little bit. I said, I'm just following the dictates of my conscience. He smiled, because that's what the atheists say. You don't need God. Just follow the dictates of your conscience. You'll be a good person.
I like they found common ground by explaining to them that their basis of what they believe and the basis of what you believe are the same.
Yeah,
By faith.
yeah. So they knew where I was going. There was no deception or anything. I said, I need to be able to present it from the Bible too. I'll do it from the other basis, but I need that. Hey, you're the one giving the speech. You give it any way you want. Then God used it. Wouldn't let me talk about anything but the Bible. Okay? The introduction should have made it perfectly clear that the heretical nature of charismatics was the main point of the treatise, and that drawing that conclusion was to be based upon their use of tongues. But he didn't. He tried going into the Bible, or she, whoever was the imaginary author, and just kind of wove a can of spaghetti and expected us to get meatballs out of it without having to dig through the spaghetti. All right? Such lack of clarity, are we still up there somewhere?
You need to go on the bird.
Okay. Oh, that way. Yeah, I see it. If that was just a little bit bigger, I'd be able to read it from here. That's why I want to hang one right there. So it's close enough for these old weak eyes to see it.
You can't raise the font on it?
No, it's a PDF. It's a PDF. I could make it bigger, but then I'd have to figure out how to scroll from side to side on the screen. That was as big as I could get it, get a whole page on the screen. Once I hang a monitor up there, I'll be fine. Such lack of clarity can make it hard to discover the actual conclusion that is expected to be drawn. It is misleading and serves only to cloud the issue. Yes, in that treatise, the use or misuse of tongues was discussed, excuse me, and sufficient reasons were given for a scriptural conclusion to be drawn concerning what are proper uses and which are improper. However, the application of the information was constantly throughout the entire treatise aimed at the heretical nature of the charismatic movement. It was easily discovered that that was the actual main point of the treatise. In other words, the conclusion the author wanted to establish. Why didn't he tell me that in the first place? Why didn't he tell me where we were going instead of going around and up and down and around and around? Misleading is one possibility. Misdirection is another. It leaves one questioning the motives of the author. Why did he or she, why did he not state his purpose up front? Why did he use a convoluted approach that led the readers in one direction and then at certain junctures would jerk them abruptly in another? Such composition would leave me questioning the motives of the author and wondering if there was a possible hidden agenda of the author, and would probably cause me to discount the treatise altogether. You lead me in one direction and then jerk me over here, and then you're going to lead me all the way over here and then jerk me back over there. After a while, I'm just going to throw it out. I don't want to hear anything. Remember the guy I mentioned that said, he told me he was a Baptist writer, but if you tell anybody that, I'll call you a liar? That was it. Not only did I lose respect for him as a Christian and as a preacher, but I lost respect for him as my teacher. After that, it was, what do you want me to say? Okay, I'll write it in a book so I can pass this class. I mean, I lost all interest in it. Yeah. It did not accomplish its stated purpose of discussing tongues in the Bible. In fact, it only obliquely addressed that issue while plowing on toward a different issue altogether. Here we go. So let's get down to summary. Focus. Find the focus of anything presented to you. Sometimes it may be easy to find, but in others, as in the treatise discussed above, it may take determined assessment while following an author's convoluted trail through the wilderness, trying to discern the actual destination. You know how many days it should have taken the children of Israel to reach Sinai?
4 days.
11. I've heard 4. I've heard 11. But it should never have taken over 2 weeks. I mean, even with a trail of people that long, in 2 weeks, the first ones in the line should have already been at Sinai. Instead, they had to spend 40 years.
So were they going around in circles?
Yep.
I think because of the millions of people that were involved in that, how many of them came up following the tail end is, you know.
That's what I'm saying.
They kept going around and around.
Yeah, anything there.
Well, I think what God did is he
Oh,
took
you
him,
camped here last year when it came around.
I think, yeah. I think he must have taken them all along around. When I was growing up, China had 500 million people at that time. And we're talking about 50 years ago. They said, statistically, I read one time, they said if they had marched them in a circle, it would never end. No, not a circle. If they marched them in a straight line, it would never end. People were being born faster than the people that were dying on the other end of the line. Now they're, what, billion people or something. If you got a bill like the children of Israel, I mean, the ones that were dying were probably just as many were being born day by day as they were marching along. And you always see the picture of Moses with a long white beard. My Bible says his natural force was not abated.
What's that mean?
And the shoes didn't wear out. And the clothes didn't wear out. He looked exactly the same at the end of 40 years as he did at the beginning of the 40 years.
Abated means?
Huh?
That's what abated.
Abated, yeah, it did not diminish. It did not taper off. He didn't get old and decrepit. But in the movies, they always show him at the end as a 120-year-old man, you know. Okay, so focus. Find the focus of anything presented to you. Next week, we're going to stop a few minutes early tonight. Next week, we're going to go with reasons. And that's what it'll be. Page 42 for me. Is it the same for you? Page 42.
It is.
And I do still want you, the rest of the students that have not done their homework, finish your homework on the RRA. RRA. I'm trying to find my place. Here we are. Page 42.
Oh.
And I'll try to get an example done, maybe just a brief one. Maybe bring one from, one of my students just turned in his critical thinking book. I could make you do like I do the students online, critical thinking. They have to keep a critical thinking journal during the entire time they're in the class.
Might be pretty constructive.
It was, but it would take us about 4 or 5 weeks to go through his journal. What topic did you reflect upon today? And then your reasons, and at the end of the week, and then they make out a daily journal.
Well, that could be extensive.
His was quite long, but it was to show how he developed his critical thinking over a period of several months. Okay? So, quite extensive. He didn't, I have to critique it and then send him back suggestions of how he could improve his critical thinking. But the main thing I want to get across to you is just think about it. Not only think about it, why do you believe what you believe? What are your reasons? Reflect on it. Think about it. What are your reasons? What are the alternatives? Why do they believe what they believe? Well, they believe that, the soul is just, when you die, the soul goes to heaven, poof, it's just gone. But in the book of the Revelation, it says, and the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. Well, that sure shoots that one down, but you'd be surprised how many Christians believe exactly that. Soul annihilation. Many churches teach it. Many Christians believe it. And that doesn't mean they're lost. It just means they're confused.
It takes away responsibility.
Well, yeah, because I don't have to face, I got to face judgment, but if it's too bad and my bad outweighs my good, then I don't have to worry about eternal torment. I just, poof,
Those same people think in their minds that because they don't believe it, it's not true.
And well, they don't believe in hell to begin with.
50% of Christians, I bet the number's close to 50%. Don't believe it.
Actually, I think I addressed that, didn't I, a couple of months ago? I was taking common Bible, or not common Bible terms, but I think it was five things that Christians believe today that are just simply not biblical. And I don't think one of them was, I can't remember right now, Jesus sinned. Remember, that was one of the 5 things that's a common belief. Like 50% of the Christians believe Jesus sinned while he was here. Well, my Bible says he was tempted in every point like as we are, and yet was without sin.
Well, every drunk will tell you that Jesus made wine, and he.
Well, of course, yeah. And the Mormons will tell you that the wedding at Cana was his wedding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their material says that's what he did, is he married them 3, 4, 5 women that were following him around. The reason they followed him around, they were his wives.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that wedding at Cana was his own wedding.
Yeah, right.
Well, you could prove that by taking a verse here, and a verse there, and a verse over here. And doesn't the Bible say ye are gods? So that means they're...
As God.
No, the Bible says, in the Psalm it says, ye are gods. But if you get in and study the word gods, it means a spiritual being. It doesn't mean a deity. It's a use of the word that means a spiritual being. In other words, we're not just flesh and blood. We are spiritual beings, just like the angels are spiritual beings. Okay? So, focus on what the main point is, introduction and the conclusion, and then you can see if the body leads from there to here.
So what you're saying is you go to the conclusion to find out what the main point is.
Yeah, actually, you're going to have to many times. Well, but I don't want to know the ending. We're not talking about a novel. We're talking about,
That's the first thing that came to my mind.
yeah, is hell real? Did Jesus sin while he was here? We're not talking about some novel. We're talking about something that is going to make a difference in our spiritual life that should then show up in the way we live our physical life. All right? So, and labels. So, you call yourself a Methodist, you call yourself an Assemblies of God, call yourself a Baptist, and call yourself a Hindu, call yourself an atheist. Well, not only that, but none of those things decide if you're going to go to heaven or hell. It's what you do with Jesus Christ. Well, the atheist is not going to do anything with him. Yes, but he doesn't go to hell for being an atheist. He goes to hell for not accepting Jesus Christ, because that sin of being an atheist and saying there's no God is already paid for.
Points are moot.
Yeah, John 3, 16 through 18. They that believe not are condemned already. Why? For they have not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Okay? So, focus. That's where we're going to go in Frisco. Any questions or comments? Would you dismiss us in prayer?
Certainly. Well, God, thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the weather you've given us. Thank you for air to breathe, Lord. Feet to walk with. Lips to speak with, Lord. Thank you for lungs to breathe with, dear God. I just want to love you. I want to express my love and let you know how much I praise you and thank you for what you've allowed to get accomplished in our class today and in our lives today, Lord. Bring them. Oh God. Guide us and direct us in the path in which you'd have us to take. Thank you for all things, Lord, for your life, your love, for everything you do and are. Thank you for even choosing to use these vile vessels of ours. Thank you for your love, for your life, for all things in Jesus' name. I give you thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen. All right. We'll get us